We're going to discuss the situation in with we have the E-mini S&P of where we at current status-wise in the S&P. So we always want to find out what the story is of the market, okay? So the story of the market is what? Well, we have a market in the S&P currently is having lower lows and lower highs. So we can never discount this, okay? Now, we always talk about the reaction. When we get here with this high volume at the low down here, this is probably some type of climatic action, even though we don't have the wide ranges for a selling climax, okay? Even though we don't have a selling climax. So we have somewhat of a shorting of the downward thrust, and stocks tend to make V-bottoms, okay? Which this market decided to do, or attempted to, right? Makes a V-bottom type of thing, okay? But the key areas, as we know, is where the vertical supply area comes in. So demand has to overcome supply when you have a bearish background. Well, the last several weeks we gave this as a target, and we said this was a good area the market should have resistance at. If the market was bullish, we should see some absorption here. If the market but if the market is bearish, we'll sell off. Yes.
Can I ask my question here?
Yes.
So this is the weekly. So this goes back to when you said you gave a positive statement, but if it stays above that buying bar in
Correct.
that bullish wave, yes, there's a selling bar currently. No, not that.
Right, but I'm going to draw it in here.
Okay, yeah.
But that's one, right? Okay.
Yeah, and then
and this is drawn because it's a markup bar, right?
Markup bar. Right. But if it stays above this bullish bar that you marked it off of, doesn't that indicate that we're still in a strong market?
It's about halfway back, right?
Right.
So to speak, it's about halfway back. Two things. One, you have to recognize that we have cluster closes. So the market is somewhat of an equilibrium.
Right.
So there's a battle between bulls and bears here as well as here. So here you're a little bit indecisive because now you're mid-range of the market and put your at support. Do we have supply volume that came in? Well, we still have the rest of the day to go for. We don't really have supply volume. As a matter of fact, the volume today is probably going to be a little bit more than last week, but the range is much larger. So it's more of a lack of demand on the weekly that we couldn't punch through resistance than it is supply.
But if it is high volume selling bar that we're coming off of, it has to absorb, so it'll
Correct.
try to sell off, but then if there's no volume in it, isn't that suggesting that the selling can weaken?
Correct. So we're seeing the market decrease in volume, and probably a lot of this to do with the holiday volume, right? As we go into towards the end of the year, Christmas time. So we have that type of situation. So this is probably a situation where the market has some nice run up. The CM saw that the funds were not buying aggressively, and they were running out of power and steam. So when it got to an area of resistance, he said, "Wait a minute, they don't have enough buying power to push it above this thing." So we
might have to go lower to find demand?
Correct. So even though the market may not be bearish, it still needs to get demand. Now here, if we take our volume, we got an area, we take this volume, look at the difference in volume. So there's activity here, long liquidation here, but we have not really had the accumulation process here. This is more of a short covering rally. How do I say that? Because the volume is decreasing. So it's a lack of demand rally or more of a short covering rally, which is why it's critical that the market gets above this 41.83 area. And we talked about that for weeks as being a target. Why? Because we want to see how the market acts in that area.
Mm.
So the CM defended it here and defended it here. So now the CM has to defend. Now the CM has to defend support.
Right.
We know what he feels about resistance, right? We know he feels about resistance, but what does he feel about support? Does it go cheap enough for him to buy?
Right, okay.
Does he allow the funds and specs to mark it down without him paying up and buying it for him? Or does he stop the market's action? Okay? So if we go now to the daily chart, okay? We'll just leave our lines. Well, we'll remove them easier. We now see that. We now see, obviously, two things. One, a retest of the vertical supply area. 2, we have a market that yesterday I thought we had a possibility, okay, of a shorting of the downward thrust here. But the story may be bearish in nature because of how we're coming off of here. Okay, or it could be just a probe to eventually go higher. Now, seasonally, we're strong here, but nothing is normal. But you can say this sell-off here lacks volume. Probably lacks volume for 2 reasons: 1, the holiday, and 2, people are not aggressively getting out of longs.
Right.
So, what does this typically usually mean is that we get to this area, wipe out these longs, either go into the afterwards result position or we go into the spring position.
Right.
But it's an important area that the CM has to defend. If he allows the longs to liquidate to continue, then you can have some type of some more of severe markdown. So so the question is, where does the CM make a stand? Well, we don't know that in advance, but we do know that how do we know when he does it? A spring or effort versus bag holding.
Yes.
So what's your position here? You say, CM, show me the way. You give them the edge and let them do it. In an uptrend, you don't have to wait for the CM to tell you because you already know that's up.
Yeah, but the cause is being built so much that move is going to be a nice move.
Correct.
Uh-huh.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So even though you look at it when the FOMC, a major thing, the market's basically in a range bound. So then, how do you know there's no campaign going on really? There's a campaign, but no markup to basically give cluster closes. We've been here for the last month. So now we'll judge, is this stopping volume? Of course it is. High volume, low and close, stopping volume. Supply, no. Stopping volume, yes. Yesterday, I thought it was a little stopping volume to the downside, but it may have to go into the spring position. If it doesn't go into the spring position, then you'll probably have a long rotation.
And the plot thickens.
Correct. So now you wait for CM to tell you. There's no reason to jump the gun.
Right.
Why? Because look at the cost built.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of bullshit there. One, we're basically more towards the upper end of the range than downside of the range.
Right.
2, we really have a supply from resistance, right? So
we're going to look for buying tails.
Correct. So we have to look for either of accumulation process, buying tails, bag hold or spring, or some type of markdown when longs liquidate and supply comes in.
Right. Another retest.
Correct.
Perfect.
So sometimes closes really don't matter too much in here, but the volume versus the range will matter a lot.
Not at the moment, but at the right-hand side,
Correct.
The closes matter, right?
Right. Now you get a situation where you can get a market. This close was not great because it came from resistance. If it came out of the area that didn't have resistance, maybe the market just ran out of steam. But the fact that the CM defended price here and defended it here, we got to see the quality of the break. Here, the break was pretty sharp or pretty decent, right? Here, it doesn't look as sharp. But that doesn't mean it can't look as sharp.
Right.
I said right now it doesn't.
Right.
So we have to wait for that.
Oh, that was excellent.
Right?
Okay.
So that's the story of the S&P as of Thursday.